Hey, what's going on YouTube? In today's video, we'll talk about how to get even more mana and one last tip to help you in your upcoming KVK. A little while ago when they first introduced Flint, that was about the same time they introduced holistic skills. Just as a reminder, your holistic skills are skills that apply to all legions at all the time, regardless of whether or not the hero with the holistic skill has been deployed, whether they're leading the legion or not. So once you unlock a holistic skill, once you leveled up, all your legions everywhere get that bonus. And the thing with holistic skills, they're things that aren't like directly combat related. They're gathering, they're peacekeeping, they're engineering, but not the direct PvP stuff. Now, look, obviously engineering has a strong PvP aspect, but it's not like legion to legion combat. And one of the things about the holistic skills is if you look through the gathering heroes, their gathering skills are always holistic skills. And you see the same thing with engineering, the same thing with peacekeeping. And so the idea is once you level these heroes up, their skills basically they apply to all legions everywhere. Now look, the talent tree still matters. That's why you need to send out your gathering heroes to gather. That's why like Emrys is still not a good gathering hero. But in terms of their skill set, these apply to all the legions everywhere. All right. And when they released Flint, however, there was one exception, right? And you see his force skill here, it's a holistic skill. But when you look at his awakened skill, 10% more resources when gathering. Obviously, that's a gathering skill, but it's not a holistic skill, right? Only Flint gets this. And so, like, when Flint came out, right, well, he's the best gathering hero because all the other gathering heroes, their holistic skills apply to everyone, but Flint has a skill that only applies to Flint. Okay, and a couple months later, they introduced Aerolus. Kind of the same thing here. She has two holistic skills related to gathering, but her awakening skill as well gives you a 10% resource, and then less 7 wounds when you're gathering outside of Lion's territory. All right, so pretty similar to Flint. I thought she was slightly inferior to Flint because I don't really care that much about the 7 wounds on my gathering unit, and she doesn't always get the 10% bonus, whereas Flint does always get the 10% bonus. So right, pretty comparable. I would say Flint is a slightly superior gathering hero. Okay, but the deal was when Aerolus first came out, someone wrote to me, hey, if I put Aerolus and Flint together and I gather, am I going to get a 20% bonus? Because as those bonuses going to stack, obviously provided that you're gathering somewhere in Alliance territory. And I remember saying to them, yeah, it should work, but we're going to have to like awaken Aerolus to make sure, right? Aerolus wasn't awakened right at the time. You can't use universal tokens on her. You can get her from the gold chest, but the main way to get her is, with those little dark Eliana-esque raid things, all right? We finally awakened her and it was tested, and people reported unfortunately it doesn't work. If you put them together, you only get the 10% bonus. All right, so then the other day my alliance member asked me, hey, Flint plus Aerolus, that's the best thing to put in the alliance resource center, right? You're gonna get a 20% bonus. And I told them, no, it doesn't work. And then I thought, what, there's been like 3 major patches since that came out. I wonder if they changed it. Okay, so we did some testing, we put them together. Great news, they now stack. If you put Flint and Aerolus together, that's the best gathering combination you can get, obviously provided they're both awakened. You will get that 20% bonus whenever they gather. Now, look, you could split them up, you could put them in a level 8 mana node, they'll both work, but the best thing to do is to put them together into your Alliance RSS center, especially if it's a mana well, because you're going to get 20% of that, and on average, you're going to gather more mana from your Alliance RSS Center than some random node because you keep going. The Alliance RSS Center lasts 12 hours, and so that's the best way to get mana there. Okay, so that's my first tip for you. The second tip is about an artifact that I think has gone, that I've been a little too harsh on, okay? And that artifact is the Ancient Tree Roots. You can see I got it exemplar here, and I was really upset when I got it exemplar. I think like this is one of the worst draws you can get. But something that, I didn't really give enough credit to, the exemplar effect gives me additional gathering speed. I'm typically pretty down on gathering speed. I find it a bit of an overrated stat, and most of the time when I send out gatherers, it's the last thing I do. And so I'm going to finish that, that mana node regardless if I have the gathering speed or not. But there's one big exception to that, and that's your Alliance, mana well or your Alliance RSS Center, right? The Alliance RSS Center since the recent changes, it lasts a flat 12 hours. So the more you can gather from that Alliance RSS Center during whatever period you're in it, the better, right? It runs out on time, not on resources. And so this is the one area where resource gathering speed is really important. Okay, let's go back to the artifacts here. There are a number of artifacts that give you a bonus to your gathering speed. For example, Lucius Horn here, one of the other sort of, you get it from Dark Chest type artifacts. It'll give you 40% when it's maxed out. Same thing with the Ancient Tree Roots. But the great thing about the Ancient Tree Roots is when you use it, it gives you an additional 15% gathering speed for 3 hours. If you look at Lucius Horn, I also have this exemplar. How awesome. This gives you, when you use it, you get 20% for 3 hours, but only for whatever resource you roll, right? So you're going to use this, it's going to spawn a random resource, whereas the Tree Roots works all the time, okay? Now, I used to call Tree Roots like the worst legendary artifact in the game. I'm actually kind of warming to the artifact right now. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not happy that I rolled an exemplar Ancient Tree Roots. I'd much rather get an exemplar Infernal Flame or Mirage Orb or something like that. But the thing with Ancient Tree Roots is, at least I use it, right? You look at, I got exemplar Springs of Silence. This literally never gets used. Tear of Arbonne, it's benched for me. I don't see it coming back. But I use Ancient Tree Roots all the time. Now, the thing about Ancient Tree Roots is the effect kind of is not that good, right? So what it does is when you use it, it'll teleport you to a random node, and okay, great. I don't know why that's good. It might teleport you to mana. It might teleport you to wood or ore or something you're probably not that interested in. But the thing is, you don't have to gather in that node. So I'll show you what I do, right? I'm interested in mana, and I'm specifically interested in putting Flint and Airless in my Alliance mana node. So I'm going to send them out. And look, if you've got all the resource donkeys in the world, you can use donkeys for this. What I do is when I'm gathering in the Alliance RSS node, I use infantry instead. Sometimes I'm in a KVK situation where that's dangerous and I won't do that. But most of the time when it's not dangerous, and I'm in Home Kingdom right now, so there's no threat, I will use infantry for this march, right? So I get as much infantry as I can in the march, I send them out, and then I hit the little, Ancient Tree Roots here. I let it, do its thing. Okay, and then it wants me to gather, hey, look, a mana node, that's great. Well, here's the thing. I'm not interested in the mana node. I want my Flint Airless March in the Alliance RSS Center because they're going to be able to gather as much mana from that as possible during the period of time. The other thing, of course, is I have the buffs up to include Enhanced Gathering. Basically, I have so many of these Enhanced Gathering items, I will never use them. As long as I play this game, I accumulate them far faster than they are used up. So I figure, why not have these up all the time? And the increased gathering speed is really important, like I said, when you're in the Alliance Mana Well, or whatever RSS center you have. Now, pairing Flint and Airless together, provided they're both awakened, it does not matter who the primary is and who the deputy is. The one thing that matters is whoever the primary is has to have the gather tree, basically spec'd out correctly. And I'll show you what I have for Flint here. The main thing is you want to make sure you get all the increased gathering speed as possible. Obviously, you're going to grab that. That's pretty easy. And specifically, you want to make sure you get the mana gathering speed up as much as possible. You also want quick harvest here. You want the increased gathering speed here. And other than that, honestly, it's not that important. You can see I have some movement speed here. I have some increased Legion capacity here. In the rare event that I'm gathering something else, I have some wood gathering speed. I do think Windfall here is much better than the alternative. I have a couple of the PvP talents here so that if I'm attacked, I go immune and I retreat to my city. Not a big deal, but at some point you just run out of interesting things to take on this tree. Alright, so that's the sort of gathering advice I have for you today. If you have Flint and Airless together, pair them together, put them in your Alliance RSS Center, hopefully it's a mana well, give them your best gathering speed artifact you have. If you happen to have Ancient Tree Roots Exemplar, that is the best. Hit the little trigger, don't go into the node it spawns. Once after it triggers, head to the Alliance RSS well. Okay, and I promised you one other piece of advice. You can see here we have just a little less than a day before our KVK begins, and we had these new events drop today. Part of the events that drop are the Festival of Fortitude. And if you check on the login events here, every day when you log in, you get some, some resources, a gold key, whatever, and 200 CP. Do not grab the CP until you enter the KVK. This isn't a good additional way to get an additional 1000 CP just at the start of your KVK. Look, it's not a huge thing, but at the beginning of your KVK, the biggest limiting factor on you is prestige. You get prestige by killing Darklings or rallying Dark Forts, and you need CP to do that, and you just don't have enough until you're a couple weeks into your KVK. So every bit of CP you can squeeze out at the start of the season is a big advantage. So my advice to you today is do not claim the CP until after your KVK is started. All right, that's all I got for you today. Until next time, you stay classy, Belleron.